Yeah, I will. Well. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much. It's 3:35, so we want to go ahead and get started. My name is Janet Lund, so hello, welcome. I hope you're enjoying the conference. We have a really special event that's about to happen. One of the missions of WIBA is to not only mentor and empower women, but to celebrate the accomplishments of women in the field of behavior analysis. And boy, do we have an amazing inductee class for you today. So I'm so grateful that you're here. Thank you for coming to honor them and the fact that the things they did enable us to stand on their shoulders in this field. So this event, we have a few special guest stars. We're starting with Linda. So Linda's gonna kick us off. So you're gonna have a little bit of Zoom, and then you'll have the rest of us who are going to be in person with you, talking about these amazing women. We may have a guest appearance a little bit later, so stay tuned. So Linda, I am ready to turn it over to you to just give people the history of this. So thank you very much. If you haven't scanned your CEUs, this is a CE event, so please, while we're doing this, go ahead and scan in.
All right, I'm going to take it from here and just Janet text or let me know if anything isn't going the way it should with audio. But I am delighted to be here to kick off the Women in Behavior Analysis Hall of Fame induction for 2023. The mission statement for our Women in Behavior Analysis Hall of Fame is to honor the accomplishments of women pioneers in the field of behavior analysis and to create a historic record that helps to educate people like us, the newer generations, on their contributions. And so really we embrace the idea of having each of us begin to learn more about the history of our profession, our field, and the women who were always there, but who may not have received the same opportunities and accolades as others. Sometimes they did. And regardless of what opportunities they had, there are women who did tremendous things. The women that we induct each year have met the criteria of having 30 plus years of experience in the field. They may be retired or semi-retired. They have awards and accolades and scholarly contributions, but we also particularly examine their teaching, their mentorship, and their leadership positions. So you will hear the stats about their accolades today, but you also are going to hear the stories of them and their relationships. And these inductees have been selected on their ability to serve as a role model for the next generations. So their stories about how they influence the people around them, including me and including you, whether you know it or not, is really a huge part of what we are celebrating. We do have a committee that has selected the inductees for each year. We are an all-female committee. I currently serve as the chair and appoint the other people on our committee. And our committee does exist of at least one other member of the advisory board and 2 other qualified members from outside of the advisory board. We are inducting our 3rd class, and we are just beginning to rotate some people off of the committee and others on to give people the opportunity to participate. Doing the research to learn about these women has been a tremendous experience for every single member of the committee, and you might also want to have that experience. So we established the Hall of Fame in 2021. We induct 4 to 6 new members each year, and we collect memorabilia as a living history display to share the accomplishments of these women. 2021 was our first class of inductees. What you'll see is that beginning at the left, The inductee class is represented from the earliest year of birth to the latest year of birth. So our inaugural class included Bea Barrett, Martha Bernal, Eve Siegel, and Judy Fable, who was actually able to join us in person in Nashville. Last year, in 2022, we inducted Ellen Reese, Barbara Etzel, Frances Horowitz, Beth Solzer-Azaroff, Julie Vargas, and Gwendolyn Cartledge. Gwendolyn was able to join us live in Nashville, and Julie joined us remotely. The first inductee class has actually been memorialized in a manuscript version of that presentation, which is available in Behavior Analysis and Practice. And the 2022 inductees manuscript will appear in Behavior Analysis and Practice later this year. Next year, you'll see the article on our 2023 inductee class. We are honored to induct these 5 amazing women to tell you about their accomplishments, their histories, and also their relationships. Many of these women knew each other and were close friends in this class, and also with people in the earlier inductee classes. And those stories are the ones that we want to share with you. Let's begin with Dr. Janet Ellis.
Thank you, Linda. We're taking you off screen, although you look wonderful. Don't take it personal. So as Chris is getting this set up, I can certainly start. So I absolutely have the privilege of inducting Dr. Janet Ellis, and it's super fun for me as a Janet to induct a Janet. So really thrilled about that. So I can start a little and tell you a bit about Dr. Ellis. So Janet Ellis was born in 1930 in New York City, very exciting. But she actually grew up in Dallas, Texas. So she was really a Texan through and through. And as a good Texan, she did her undergraduate work at UT Austin, and she completed her, oh, Chris, can you come up here because the notes aren't scrolling? Sorry. I just want you to come up. She completed her undergraduate degree in, she got a bachelor's of fine arts in radio and television, and she was reported to have an absolutely incredible radio voice, which I'm very jealous about. And she actually worked at a local radio station in Dallas right after her graduation at KRLD in Dallas. I really would have loved to have heard her do her sign off on that. And so from that, great. Sorry, tech. So from that, while she was there, she got married and had a son. His name was David in 1954. And unfortunately, that marriage didn't work, but fortunately, she decided to move on. Thank you. She decided to move on after that job at the radio station. She decided to move on to Texas Instruments. And at Texas Instruments, she met her husband, you guys, of 55 years, Ed Ellis. And Ed was an incredible man. I'll tell you a little bit more about him. Ed adopted David, and they had 2 sons together. Joshua, who was born in 1966, while Janet was doing her master's degree in speech therapy and audiology. And then she had a second son while she was doing, embarking on her speech therapy. Her second son in 1971, his name was Noah, while she was embarking on her second master's, so 1 wasn't enough for Janet Ellis. She got 2, and she got that in clinical psychology at the University of North Texas. But never one to rest on her laurels, Janet Ellis decided she wanted to go on and get her PhD, so she did just that and got her PhD at the University of North Texas. And as you can tell from this brief overview of Janet's educational history, she just wasn't one of those people to sit back and take it easy. After she earned her PhD, she was the owner of Performance Consultants for 6 years, while she was also an adjunct faculty member, so she kind of wore 2 hats, and a program director at the Center for Behavioral Studies in the School of Community Service. Now, Janet was also then appointed as assistant professor at UNT and worked her ranks all the way up to full professor in 2002, and that was a position she kept until her retirement. All the while doing this, she also became a licensed psychologist in Texas, and she was a charter BCBA from the very first class. So lots of academics kudos and also work kudos, but as you might imagine, her degrees and her employment don't even begin to scratch the surface of the extent of her contributions to behavior analysis. So I'd love to talk to you about some of those. So those people who were privileged enough to know Janet, there's probably no better way to demonstrate or illustrate her commitment and energy than considering her role in the formation of the behavior analysis program at University of North Texas, together with her favorite co-star for many adventures, Sigrid Glenn. So these 2 women you see here, Janet and then Sigrid Glenn, you might know the dude in the middle, B.F. Skinner, and then also Judy Stowe. So Janet and Sigrid plotted and planned and persisted under layers and layers of university red tape to establish a program at the University of North Texas. These 2 women simply refused to accept that behavior analysis outside of psychology could not stand alone, nor that the students of behavior analysis were not employable without having a psychology degree. And thank goodness they did. So with these 2, they worked incredibly long hours, finding ways to fund themselves so that they could offer these coursework to other individuals. So building their own financial support while also teaching these classes. And because of that, these 2 women created the Center for Behavioral Studies that had a single employee, Sigrid Glenn, and it became the Center for Behavior Analysis with an undergraduate department and a master's degree. And then finally, it became the Department of Behavior Analysis, which now has a PhD program. This department was also the recipient of the 2012 award for enduring programmatic contributions to behavior analysis, and that's awarded by the Society for the Advancement of Behavior Analysis. That is not an easy thing to do. That is a singular honor. So these 2, never losing sight of the long game, they were truly a force of nature. And I want you to remember the time that all of this was happening. Janet used to point out that she and Sigrid called each other doctor because nobody else did. So with that being said, during her 30 years at UNT, Janet's scholarship was both broad and programmatic. It was always characterized by her dual mission, helping others and involving her students. So the next series of slides that I'm going to present to you is just intended to give you an overview of the range of Janet's areas of expertise, as well as her incredible productivity. So you can see here that as I provide this overview, I want you to kind of take note at the varied publication outlets that Janet targeted. Obviously, she was not one that felt comfortable just staying and preaching to the choir. This woman took behavior analysis out to the masses. So yes, her work can be found in the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis, but also in some incredible other journals, such as Addiction, the American Psychologist, the Journal of the Academy of Behavioral Medicine, the Journal of Offender Rehabilitation, and the Education and Treatment of Children. So you see, Janet was active in research here in education, but she also was active in clinical practices. So some of the targets were typical for us, like basic ABA kind of things that we like to research, but Janet took it to other areas. You can see here she did work in bulimia and also in the urges in the treatment of addictions. So what an accomplishment. Janet also did groundbreaking work in corrections. And we rarely find the field of corrections in our literature anymore, but Janet was doing this work. She worked on reading programs in the prisons. She taught social workers and prison guards ABA principles to work on the interactions in the prison. It's amazing. So as she did all this, one of the other things you may not know is Dr. Janet Ellis is responsible for some of the very first published research on using functional analyses in the public school system. So she took our science and she took it out. So quite an accomplishment. And of course, while all of Janet's work was rooted and grounded in strong conceptual issues, those were sometimes the target of her scholarship as well. And in keeping with the theme of reaching out, I think you'll be impressed with this one too. So Janet was committed to making behavior analysis coursework available to people, no matter where they were. And here, shown with Susan Miller, she helped to spearhead and promote the distance learning program at UNT. Now, today, we take online learning, distance learning for granted. Many of you may have gotten your degrees in distant learning programs, but this was in the 1990s, and online distance learning still needed an incredibly strong defense, and Janet was there to do it. So Janet and her colleagues saw a need, saw developing technology, and had the vigor to go out and design a series of coursework that would fulfill the academic requirements for the behavior analysis certification exam so that they could provide that to people in remote locations, but also people in international locations. And their initial course sequence was the very first one approved by the BACB. Amazing. So today, UNT offers 2 different online programs. One is the 8-course verified course sequence certificate, and the other one is a master's degree for applied students. It's a 1-year master's degree, and there are over 200 students enrolled in that. So it turns out that from small things, big things come, especially when those small things get their foundation from Janet Ellis. So one of the things about Janet that her true legacy is probably best felt is in her rich relationships with other people. She interwove that between behavior analysis, her students, and the communities that she served. Janet had her students and their hands in work in school systems with aging populations we've already talked about, in prisons. And what her programming created a system of a model of social awareness, being aware of the needs of others, being generous in their programming, hard work, and commitment to the people that we get to serve, and all of that in the name of behavior science. But the thing about Janet Ellis is she had no pretense. She was known as someone who wore their heart proudly on their sleeve, and she was known to maybe laugh, cry, and curse, all in the same exuberant outburst. I really wish I had met this woman. Sounds amazing. She is described by people who know her as animated, caring, and frank. So outside of Janet's work at UNT, which was extensive, as you can see, the rest of behavior analysis benefited from her expertise as well. Here you can see a long list of things that Janet accomplished. She worked at almost every area of the ABAI functionality, and also the Cambridge Center for Behavioral Studies got her expertise in the Board of Trustees and advisors. And that's not it. There's more, you guys. On the editorial front, Janet served as the editor-in-chief and the first female editor of Behavior and Social Issues for 7, yes, count them 7, that's a lot of years, She also was the associate editor for Behavior Analysis and Social Action. She served on the editorial board of the Behavior Analyst and the Behavior Analysis Digest, and she worked as a reviewer for many more journals and book series. So I have to tell you, just personally, I am so happy that both Janet and Sigrid are being inducted into the Hall of Fame together in this class. It's really kind of amazing. When we think about what we're about, WIBA, our mission, it's about mentoring and uplifting women. And there's probably not a better example of two women who did that and were there for each other than Janet and Sigrid. So I am just thrilled that they are being inducted together. And perhaps no one alive knew Janet better than her buddy and pal and co-conspirator, Sigrid Glenn. So it's only fitting for us to end with a few quotes about Janet from Sigrid. Moxie, great word. Janet Ellis had moxie, a force of character, determination, nerve. That sounds a lot like a woman behaving boldly, by the way. When she arrived for her interview as a chief psychologist at the prison, she confessed to the psychologist she really didn't want that job, but what she really wanted to do was implement a reading program using direct instruction. And by the time she left, guess what? She had gotten that job, and then she went on later to publish an article about prison contingencies in effect for both inmates and guards. Innovative. Janet was innovative. She adapted functional analysis methods for use in public schools, publishing some of the very first reports in that area. She was an astute clinician, and she taught her students more, much more, than just routine application of procedures. Commitment. Janet Ellis's middle name was Commitment. Do what it takes was her motto, and she did. Her commitment to her students was boundless. She didn't wait for them to come to her with a problem. She informed them what they should do about their problem. Her commitment to the department was legendary. There was no task too hard, too big, or too unimportant. If it needed to be done, she would do it wholeheartedly and selflessly. Loyal. Janet Ellis was fiercely loyal to her friends, her family, her students, her department, the university, and to the field of behavior analysis. Moxie, innovation, commitment, loyalty. Those are incredible words to be remembered by. Janet Ellis was the real deal, and she went at it with everything she had. So please join me in congratulating Dr. Janet Ellis. We are uplifting each other and learning how to move the cursor together. No.
Important details.
So just click here to move it forward.
Oh,
so if you just,
it's a Mac.
Yep, if you just click, yep, got it. And then, you know what? You want me to click it?
No, that would be
She's
too
like,
embarrassing.
No, I can do that. Shut up, Janet.
Wait, how do I get, so it's not a touch screen.
Yep, no, so you just click, you click back here, so you follow the arrow there, back again, and then back again.
You
And
might
then-
need to assist me in
You know,
maybe
I'll-
the first
I'll be
couple.
Oh, you know what? Can we use the arrows? Let's see.
Yeah, except for this. Again, it
Yes,
isn't a touch screen.
that you're gonna have to, yeah, move. Let me help, let me help.
Oh, no, I'm embarrassed.
No, oh, okay.
Okay, I think I
It's
can do
because
it.
it's a Mac. I'm
If I
sorry.
know it's a Mac. Oh, okay, I can do it. All right, we are here now. I'm Becky McDonald. We are here to honor my advisor and colleague, Judy LeBlanc, into the Women's Hall of Fame in Behavior Analysis. Judy certainly represents the best in applied behavior analysis. She set by example how to treat people and I should be able to do this. Okay, thank you. She was an incredible teacher in both an academic and in clinical settings. She valued everyone's strengths and found genuine happiness in the life choices she made. Let me share with you some of her highlights.
Yep.
You're going to be here the whole time, I know it. Okay. Judy was born in a small town in western Texas. She was raised by her parents, and she had an older brother. She was drawn to music, playing the piano for many years, the cello, and then she sang in high school. She even started her college years as a music major, but realized she wasn't going to be a concert pianist, so she moved to psychology. She spent the years after college teaching general and special education both in the US and internationally. Okay, in 1957, she graduated from Southern Methodist University in Texas. And in 1966, she got her master's at Kansas State in psychology. And in 1970, so she moved to Kansas. In 1970, she got a PhD in developmental and child psychology from the Department of Human Development and Family Life, which was a very new department, and she was one of Don Barre's first doctoral students. I believe that one of the most important early, so if we do little, that
Yeah, I was
maybe,
making it smaller, so
that would
maybe
be great. Oh my God, I could be independent. Okay, great. You know I can speak in public. Anybody who was here for the last. Okay, so perhaps one of the most important early career opportunities that Judy had was in 1965 when she was invited by one of her professors to serve as a coordinator for a demonstration project in Parsons, Kansas that was led by the Bureau of Child Research at KU. She was involved in the Mimosa Project, where the goal was to prepare girls who were in the institution to look and act like girls in the community and to prepare them for real jobs with real paychecks. In the 1960s, this was trailblazing. Judy learned early on that these girls could learn just about anything she set out to teach them, and this philosophy stayed with her throughout her career. In 1970, with a newly anointed PhD, she moved to Lawrence, Kansas, where she resided for the remainder of her career. In the KU's Department of Human Development, she served many roles over the years, including professor, my professor and mentor, co-chair with co-chair of the department, and then she was the director of the Computer Learning Center. She served the better part of the 1970s as the director of the Edna Hill Child Development Laboratory at the University of Kansas, and she was the director of the KU Institute for Research in Early Childhood Education of the Handicapped from 1977 to 1985, when I was there and did my graduate work. It was an amazing time. There was a lot of money. Not now. Judy was an excellent teacher at the University of Kansas. She was nominated for the Bernard Fink Outstanding Teacher Award, and she was the finalist for the Hope Award. In the words of Alita Cooper, Judy was she was a research advisor to my classroom. She was an incredible mentor to many, many students. And she and Barbara Etzel were advisors who always coupled food with work. Judy LeBlanc, Barbara Etzel, and Frances Horowitz were such advocates for women in those days. She was advocates for women as faculty back in the day, and especially for working for more equal pay. We needed women like that. Beginning as a research associate with the Schiefelbusch Institute for Research in Lifespan Studies, then called the Bureau of Child Research, at the University of Kansas, she started in 1971. She actively researched for over 26 years there, and she served as the coordinator for international development for 18 years. And of course, Judy hobnobbed with the ABA's most influential researchers, Fred Keller, Murray Sidman, B.F. Skinner, and Sid Bijou, to name a few. Judy is extremely devoted to promoting international development and work abroad. In 1985 to 1997, she was the Director of Research and Training at the Center of Education of Special Education in Ann Sullivan, so actually the CASP Center. In 1991, she was honored by the Association of Behavior Analysis with Outstanding Contribution Award for International Development. And in 1992, she was a board of directors and a director for research development in the Ann Sullivan Enterprise in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. She created this bridge between the University of Kansas and Peru that was really vital to education in South America. While Judy has authored numerous books and articles, produced several films, received over, I'm not belittling any of this, over 25 grants, served as an editor to numerous journals, I believe one of the most influential academic accomplishments was the concept of the simplest treatment alternative. The law of parsimony applied to choosing appropriate instructional control and errorless teaching procedures for the difficult-to-teach child. In this article, she and Barbara presented a method for choosing effective teaching procedures based on observing the child and working with the child during instruction. This involved gradually increasing the environmental supports. See if I can do this. Okay, I got it. Assessing the child's, involves increasing supports in the learning setting. This was truly groundbreaking in these days and laid the foundation for many educators of children with learning challenges in the years to come, including myself. In 1981, Judy was invited to come to Peru by Liliana Mayo, soon to become one of her doctoral students. They formed a 40-year partnership that resulted in the development of a state-of-the-art treatment model in Peru and around the world. In the early years, so 1984, 1989, she was the expert advisor. She arrived, they had a big handwritten sign, "Welcome, Judy." She introduced technology to them, she did a lot of teacher training, and she assimilated into their culture in a way that they really needed. She worked a lot on her language skills. She taught the principles of applied behavior analysis within the context of her life philosophy. She says, "If everyone treated others the way they want to be treated, life would be greatly improved." I prefer to call them people with different abilities rather than disabilities. The functional national curriculum was developed by Judy and a group of colleagues from the CASP program. It was designed to be an innovative approach to teaching knowledge and skills that can be used by and useful to the students throughout their life. She called it an education for life. Families and professionals work in a team and are trained to teach skills that are useful in natural settings to promote participation in society so the students can be productive members of their family, community, and workplace. Education focuses on the student's strengths to be independent, productive, and happy. Education for life involved navigating the community, learning how to ride a bus, how to navigate an airport, how to go grocery shopping, how to use an ATM machine, how to get a haircut, how to cook, all those basic things that we know how to do. And treat me like a person. Prepare me for real work. Give me a paycheck. Allow me to have choices about where I do work and what I do. And give me responsibility. Let me learn from the consequences of all those experiences. Judy also believed very strongly in the family life of the children with whom she worked. These children are growing up in the context of siblings, parents, extended family members, and they're all instrumental in the programming and the lives of these kids and their success. She really valued the families. So she got to know the families and incorporated them in their work. To that end, the mothers that she worked with just adored her. They thought so highly of her, or have thought so highly of her. They celebrate Judy. So the CASP program is now a well-established nonprofit educational institution that serves children and adults with severe intellectual disabilities, autism, and behavioral problems, their families and professionals from Peru and other parts of the world. Under the direction of Liliana Mayo, CASP is recognized and honored worldwide for its contributions as a model research, demonstration, and training center. Judy was instrumental in facilitating and encouraging a steady stream of KU colleagues and other international consultants from around the world, almost close to 30, who would come to volunteer as trainers, administrators, and fundraisers at the center. Judy LeBlanc was so proud of the program at the Cass Center and wanted the team to learn from the best in the world, and they did. Holly Sweeney was a doctoral student of Judy's and is now her successor in her role at Cass in Peru. She writes, Judy's impact on ABA was significant. She never diverted from the founding belief in the golden rule: treat others as you would like to be treated. She modeled and used the golden rule always and taught the application of applied behavior analysis through this lens. The application of applied behavior analysis, this has resulted in over 40 years of guidance for staff and families of the Cass Center, focusing on what children can do versus what they cannot, and the use of ABA to reinforce and increase these strengths and abilities. And as a result, problem behaviors decreased without specific programming. She taught how to use the principles of behavior to manage challenging behavior, but not as a primary focus, but to use the same principles to increase focus on teaching new skills and reinforcing existing skills. Cass has now expanded to other international sites, including Brazil, Panama, Ecuador, Spain, and Bangladesh. I want to end with some words from Liliana Mayo. Uh-oh.
Students, and that we always have high expectation of them, that they could be independent, productive, and happy. She also created a functional natural curriculum.
I'm going to start it again. Let's see if I can do it this on a Mac.
Judy coined the term persons with different abilities, so we could focus on the abilities of our students, and that we always have high expectation of them, that they could be independent, productive, and happy. She also created a functional natural curriculum to prepare our students for life. Thanks to Judy and her guidance, hundreds of students are now employed in real jobs with real salaries and supporting economically their families. Our deepest gratitude for the 38 years that she has taught us. She has left an indelible mark in our minds and in our hearts. We always admire the passion she had for behavior analysis and the dedication she came to Peru even in the most terrible situations that was in terrorism time. So the impact of her teachings doesn't not only stand in Peru, but in other countries. And we are confident that her legacy is going to continue in another generations to come. Muchas gracias.
Join me in congratulating Judy LeBlanc.
So you get a scroll. Exactly. Okay.
Do the thing higher and lower, and then if you just do that,
Okay.
the slides you can keep them.
Wonderful, thank you. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Tracy Sheehan, and I am so happy to be here with you all today to honor the accomplishments of these amazing women as they're inducted in the Women in Behavior Analysis Hall of Fame. I also really need to thank the WIBA Hall of Fame Committee for the opportunity to present these comments in celebration of Dr. Sigrid Glenn's contribution and induction. I first met Dr. Glenn at the ABA convention in Toronto in 2002. Having read several of Dr. Glenn's papers, I already knew she was brilliant. But during the course of that first meeting, I came to understand that Dr. Glenn was an incredible leader. She was the epitome of class and grace, and caring, committed, and wise. I decided immediately that Dr. Glenn is the kind of woman in behavior science that I aspire to be. And I immediately trusted the guidance and advice she gave me that year and in the many years to follow. Dr. Glenn checked in on me on every single behavior analysis conference after that. These unplanned meetings continued until I eventually found my way to the University of North Texas in 2009. I still remember that interview day, walking into the conference room, seeing all the brilliant faculty members that Dr. Glenn recruited to the department and program, including Dr. Janet Ellis. And I was terribly nervous. But about halfway through the first day, when it was time for a tour of the campus, guided by none other than Dr. Sigrid Glenn and Janet Ellis, I started to relax. Because I realized in that moment that I was about to have the best day of my behavior analysis life. Who gets to go on a one-hour tour of the University of North Texas campus with Drs. Glenn and Ellis? Like, I knew that I still wanted the job, but at the same time, I also knew that that experience was probably the most memorable and valuable experience that I had had to that point and would ever have in my career. I ended up getting the job, and I have subsequently had many more opportunities to collaborate with both of these amazing women, and especially Dr. Glenn since. So you're going to hear this phrase several times throughout the course of the presentation, and not just from me, but from so many others who have had their lives and careers influenced by Dr. Glenn as a teacher, researcher, leader, and mentor. But from that first meeting in Toronto in 2002, and through the course of our interactions over the last 2 decades, Dr. Glenn changed the trajectory of my career and my life. So it's my absolute honor and privilege to be here today to share with you some of the highlights of Dr. Glenn's life and career, her contributions to the science, to the discipline, to the state of Texas, and to the world. And I'm going to open with the words of one of Dr. Glenn's lifelong friends and colleagues, Dr. Janet Ellis, who, when presenting Dr. Glenn with the 2011 TexABA Career Contributions to Behavior Analysis and Texas Award, stated, "Trying to introduce Sigrid Glenn is difficult because anyone who does not know who she is, why we are honoring her, and why we should be honoring her, will probably not believe half of what we're going to describe. This woman's repertoire defies description, and behavior analysis owes a debt of gratitude probably beyond the possibility of repayment." Now I don't know how to make the slide go. Oh, there we go. All right, so born in 1939 to a sea captain in the Merchant Marines and a registered nurse working in U.S. public health, Dr. Glenn describes her father as broadly educated in many cultures of the world, and her mother as wise, stubborn, undemonstrative, and fiercely loving, capable and competent in all things practical. Her parents were different in many ways, however, and in a brief autobiography published in 2017, Dr. Glenn notes that the most important lesson she learned by having these particular parents was that differences in beliefs, strengths, and interests were not only acceptable, but they were proof that goodness is not associated with any particular way of thinking or being. And living with those parents and those differences freed her to develop her own beliefs, to read widely, and to consider received wisdom with some skepticism. These early experiences propelled her to study many different topics, leading to her first studies in drama education at the University of Texas, Austin. She graduated with a bachelor's in fine arts in 1961, working in theater for several years, and publishing her first paper entitled Romeo and Juliet in Black and White in Dramatics magazine. In 1965, she married Bob Glenn, a man of the theater. And reflecting on her 53 years of marriage to Bob, Dr. Glenn says, "He was the perfect man for me, truly a feminist. His love and support enabled me to do what I needed to do, even as he was also creating a legacy. Shakespeare Dallas is now in its 51st year." Recently married, a new mother, and still an avid reader, Sigrid began to research different career possibilities, searching for a career that would be suitable for a married woman with children. And she found Barbara Powell O'Neill's book, Careers for Women After Marriage and Children. Check out that subtitle. And she pursued clinical psychology because O'Neill described that careers in clinical psychology permitted you some freedom as to how you did your scheduling. Dr. Glenn thought that made sense, and when she, Bob, and Brittany moved to Texas, she applied to just 2 graduate programs. Dr. Glenn enrolled in the Master's in Clinical Psychology program at North Texas State University, which is now the University of North Texas, where she was first introduced to behavior analysis in a psychology course taught by Don Whaley. She also read Skinner's Contingencies of Reinforcement in the summer of 1970. A major influence in Dr. Glenn's career, Dr. Whaley founded the Center for Behavioral Studies and the first autism treatment program in Texas in 1972, where Dr. Glenn worked with children with autism starting in 1973. She graduated in 1977 and continued to work at the Center for Behavioral Studies until its closure in 1983. The same year, Dr. Whaley had managed to get the first formal courses in behavior analysis in Texas on the books. Yet in the middle of the first semester, Dr. Whaley died unexpectedly. The dean at NTSU at the time was Dr. Bill Luker, who supported behavior analysis and was another major influence in Dr. Glenn's career. After Dr. Whaley's passing, Dean Luker hired Dr. Glenn to teach the behavior analysis courses. And although Dr. Glenn recognized the value of clinical practice like the work she had been engaged in at the Center for Behavioral Studies, she also understood the importance of offering formal coursework and degree programs in behavior analysis. And Dr. Glenn made it her personal mission to do everything she could to advance behavior analysis, including starting a department of behavior analysis. How do I get the volume?
But not nearly. My mission was to contribute to advancing behavior analysis. So I could contribute to advancing behavior analysis by helping those people, but not nearly as much as I could by having a program in behavior analysis and a department in behavior analysis. And so that's how my sort of metric for deciding what I should do and what I should not do on any given year, or any given month, or even day.
So along with her colleagues at the Center for Behavioral Studies, including Drs. Judith Stowe and Janet Ellis, among others, and with the support of Dean Luker, they got to work, offering 4 undergraduate classes in less than a year, all while raising families and working full-time in clinical positions in community-based organizations. But the path to developing both degree programs in the Department of Behavior Analysis wasn't going to be easy. Dr. Stowe recounts that at the time of Dr. Whaley's passing, early efforts were underway to create a degree program within the School of Community Services. But with severe funding cuts, Dr. Stowe moved out of the center and into clinical practice and consulting, but she always kept close touch with she and Dr. Glenn's shared roots. Dr. Stowe reflects that following the untimely loss of our mentor, Dr. Donna Whaley, Sigrid took the reins and convinced the university that behavior analysis was the future of social and educational change. She put in countless hours developing curriculums, recruiting faculty and students, and demonstrating the power and value of behavior analysis for the future of the college. The Center for Behavior Analysis continued to grow under Glenn's leadership, joined by a third faculty member, Dr. Joel Greenspoon, and then a fourth, Dr. Cloyd Heighton. 4 courses grew to 6, including a 2-course sequence to introduce students to behavior analysis, and by 1989, the Center for Behavior Analysis was well on its way to becoming a legacy program in behavior analysis, offering the first master's degree in behavior analysis in Texas, which later became the first ABI-accredited program in 1993. By 1994, Dr. Glenn and colleagues had established the first department of behavior analysis in the world. But when Dr. Glenn describes the history of the founding of the department, consistent with her commitment to shared leadership and governance, she emphasizes the collective efforts of her close friends and colleagues who worked collaboratively with her toward the same. However, even in shared governance models, there tends to be 1 or 2 folks who spearhead the team. And here, in the next slide, Dr. Ellis describes the critical role of Dr. Glenn's vision and leadership she played in founding the department.
Make it happen. She put it all together. It was in her head. Nobody thought that it would work out.
By 1994, Dr. Glenn. So we could say that Dr. Glenn's contributions to advancing behavior analysis is most aptly described as a history of first, characterized by being ahead of the curve. It's a long list of accomplishments that includes serving as one of the founding members of the Texas Association for Behavior Analysis, developing the first ABI-accredited master's program, and launching the first online course sequence to be approved by the Behavior Analysis Certification Board, as Janet mentioned earlier. Important to note, Dr. Glenn worked closely with Drs. Gerald Shook and Shala Eli Rosales to create a vision for training and certifying behavior analysts, emphasizing the competence and quality of the behavior analytic services to be provided by certified behavior analysts. She brought the first multi-million-dollar endowment for basic research in behavioral neuroscience to UNT, and we would be remiss not to mention her pioneering theoretical and experimental contributions to cultural analysis. Starting with her seminal publication, Meta-Contingencies in Walden II, which was deeply inspired by her early work in the Center for Behavioral Studies, Dr. Glenn also participated in the first think tank on cultural analysis held in Brazil in 2005, which is now moving into its 8th meeting. She established the first cultural analysis research lab, published the first experimental analysis of meta-contingencies, and most recently served on the ABAI task force to develop the first concentration and certificate program in cultural behavior science. Dr. Glenn's research has prospered with the support and collaboration of several individuals, including Ed Malagodi, Marvin Harris, David Hull, and Maria Malat. And her research has advanced behavior analysis in countless ways, though perhaps most notably in providing the foundation for behavior analytic accounts of culture and cultural selection. She shared her knowledge and discoveries with a larger audience, publishing in numerous articles and chapters spanning basic and applied research to theoretical and conceptual works, and covering a wide range of topics, including verbal behavior, cultural analysis, and the education and training of behavior scientists. In fact, early in her career, Dr. Glenn already saw teaching as an important activity in advancing behavior analysis. In 1994, she established a teaching assistant teaching fellow system to assure similarity of experiences for the undergraduate students enrolled in those introductory courses, and to provide learning opportunities for the students managing the system. This system sustained under the leadership of different faculty members and funded numerous master's students teaching behavior analysis with behavior analysis until 2018. She often wrote about instructional and curricular design and how to best cultivate skillful, competent behavior analytic repertoires. Dr. Glenn is a gifted teacher, well-respected and admired by her former students, many of whom offered some of their comments on their experiences. Leslie Burkett, for example, describes Dr. Glenn as wise, noting that she changed her life, emphasizing that Sigrid was not only her teacher, but also her work colleague and her boss for many years. She still sees and visits with her often. Brooke Weekly explains that Dr. Glenn, along with Dr. Ellison, her own mother, is one of the most important female figures in her life, adding that Dr. Glenn is truly one of the great figures in behavior analysis and a shining light in the lives of all she has personally touched. Dr. Becker, a former student of Dr. Glenn's and current faculty member in the department at UNT, shares that Dr. Glenn changed the course of her life, both personally and professionally. And she describes Dr. Glenn as someone to look up to, not only as a scientist, but as an incredibly intelligent, classy, sophisticated, kind, steady, and wise human being. Dr. Glenn's impact as a teacher has no geographical boundaries. Anna Barbara Neves recalls the first time she met Dr. Glenn in Londrina, Brazil in 2002, surprised that Dr. Glenn mailed her over 30 papers, which allowed her to organize an intensive study group on meta-contingencies. Dr. Aisio Borba recalls how Dr. Glenn was always capable of making her students shine, guiding them and reflecting her light. And Rita Ola met Dr. Glenn in Sardinia, Italy in 2008 when she was invited with a relatively small group of other US-based behavior analysis scholars by Professor Giulio Bellacchi to teach at the International Graduate Program in Science of Organization and Tourism Management, where Dr. Glenn introduced students to meta-contingencies and macro-contingencies. And Rita recounts that Dr. Glenn's approach to the study of organized groups and cultural change perfectly fit with the conceptual grounds and training goals that Professor Bellacchi aimed to reach with his graduate programs and his 20 years of research and teaching activities. Rita credits her enrolling at the PhD program at the University of Nevada, Reno to Dr. Glenn's help and confidence in her, which through Dr. Glenn's expression of her honest love for science, students, and behavior analysis, demonstrated to Rita how to accomplish the impossible and to overcome expected and unexpected obstacles. Dr. Glenn's impact on her students is tremendous. It continues with each successive cohort of students that graduate from the Department of Behavior Analysis at UNT and persists through the students and mentees of these alumni. Dr. Glenn has received many accolades and held numerous leadership positions, including department chair, ABAI president, and editor for The Behavior Analyst, though perhaps none as important to her as her family. A loving wife, dear sister, devoted mother, stepmother, and grandmother, Dr. Glenn creates a family wherever she leads. Within the department, where longstanding and current faculty member Dr. Shalala Rosales characterizes Dr. Glenn as a true feminist who advocated for women in the department, noting that she led with a strong mission, that she's fearless, wise, and big-hearted, nurturing the collective and creating community. And beyond, as Dr. Ramona Homenfar describes, we make progress by standing on the shoulders of towering figures who shape our lives in profound ways. Thank you, dear Sigrid, for your amazing mentorship of many of us throughout the years. In numerous ways, your pioneering work in cultural behavior analysis changed the trajectory of my career. More importantly, your inspiring presence and gentle support have influenced my perspective about positive leadership. So cheers to you, Dr. Glenn. Thank you for teaching all of us and showing all of us to do what it takes to advance behavior analysis.
Go ahead, Linda, all set? All right, all set, go ahead. Linda, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead, Sigrid.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you so much, Linda. What an incredible honor it is to be recognized by WIBA alongside these amazing women being inducted today in WIBA's Hall of Fame. I would like to express my appreciation to the women who have dedicated so much time and energy to putting all this together. I especially want to thank Tracy Sheehan for an incredible research project she took on when she got all this information together. I know that my colleague and friend, partner in crime, Janet Ellis, would want to join me in thanking all of you for what you have done, not just for me, but for women, the future women in behavior analysis, to understand the past as you're doing. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, Sigrid, for being here to join us. It has been my honor and privilege to know you, as well as to have known Janet and to see your relationship together. You two were a stellar model to me of how to build strong relationships with other female colleagues to lift each other up. So my thanks to you. And now we will move on with our presentation of another woman that I have been fortunate to know, and that is Dr. Jan Sheldon. Jan Bowen Sheldon, PhD and JD, is being inducted into the 2023 Women in Behavior Analysis Hall of Fame. I'm going to start with telling you a little bit about her as a person. She was born August 25th, 1949, and she grew up in Lawrence, Kansas, and really has spent her adulthood and career there as well. She is definitional about the community of Lawrence, Kansas. And she was married, is married 41 years and counting, to her husband, Dr. Jim Sherman. She's the proud mother of 4 children and 8 grandchildren, all of whom you see here. And I begin with these images and information about her family because family is definitional when it comes to Jan Sheldon. Not only that family who has lived in her home, but her academic family. She is lovingly considered family by generations of Jayhawks, of KU students, mentees, and faculty, many of you whom you see here. And in fact, one of her former PhD students says the important thing about Jan Sheldon is family. That's who she is. That's what she cares about. She's very close to her kids. She welcomes her graduate students into her home and views them as an extended second family. She lives her values in her daily activities. Family's the focal point, and she values caring for those around us and advocating for people. For Jan, behavior analysis is always in the context of a relationship. Now, she is actually a Jayhawk 4 times. Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes. Am I on again?
Yes, Linda, we're here. You're back.
Great, perfect. Sorry about that. Jan Sheldon is a Jayhawk 4 times over. She got her bachelor's, master's, and PhD through the department that we now know as Human Development and Family Life. She also, 3 years after getting her PhD, got her Juris Doctorate. That is, she graduated from the law school at KU. We heard earlier about Janet Ellis's groundbreaking work in prisons and in the justice system. And Jan Sheldon is another fantastic example of wonderful work that intersects law and behavior analysis. Jan continued to be a Jayhawk 2 more times over. She became faculty in the Department of Human Development and Family Life, what we know of as the Applied Behavioral Sciences Department. She worked with people like Frances Horowitz, Barbara Etzel, Judith LeBlanc, and she was on their faculty for 44 years, an absolute pillar of that community. But wait, she also served as faculty in the KU School of Law. This was a courtesy professor position, but she taught courses for them. Think about the impact of all of those future lawyers going through KU School of Law who got to learn about the juvenile justice system, truancy prevention programs, and individual rights of those with mental health and intellectual and developmental disabilities from this woman, Jan Sheldon. This quote from her illustrates that she had 2 childhood dreams, having a doctorate in psychology and being a licensed attorney. She integrated those to do amazing things, particularly for adolescents who would otherwise move from our juvenile justice system into our adult penal system, unless someone like Jan Sheldon created opportunities, supports, and fought for their rights. I want to show you just a few of her publications. She published over 21 book chapters and 3 books. Here's an example of one of those books, Law and Mental Health Professionals. She was influencing the literature that lawyers would experience, but she was also influencing the literature that you and I would experience. She published over 50 journal articles, and I'll show you some of her greatest hits in a few minutes. But she also, throughout her career, created resources, teaching resources. So what you see in the upper left is the program called Asset, which is a social skills program for adolescents. She was creating and publishing these kinds of resources early in her career and doing research on the effectiveness throughout her career. She also created a series of instructional resources designed to teach young people how to write. Reading and writing, those literacy skills are critical to success. And when adolescents don't have these skills, the likelihood that they will not graduate and will not be able to move into jobs, employment, and the kind of life that all of us have enjoyed goes up. So she created resources to prevent that. You might recognize some of these articles that she's published in Autism and Intellectual Developmental Disabilities. Everything from telehealth parent training published during the pandemic to studies on drug behavior interactions, as well as instructional procedures, assessment and treatment of self-injury such as pica, and you might recognize some of these articles on social skills. Now, many of these studies were published with those with intellectual and developmental disabilities or individuals with autism and across a wide range of journals. But towards the bottom, what you will see is that there is a series of articles in journals such as Criminal Justice and Behavior, Child and Youth Services, Learning Disability Quarterly, and this work is on teaching social skills to court-adjudicated youths within the juvenile justice system. Here are some of her scholarship on teaching students to write. And finally, this is the body of literature that really most touches my heart. Jan Sheldon, at the core, is an advocate. So these days we talk a lot about choice and assent. In the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, Jan Sheldon was already beating that drum. Her articles on choice and control and how we help individuals achieve reasonable choices, advocating for rights, and talking about our values for community research and action. Are we studying the things that really matter and resonate with the values of our field? These are messages that she stood up and spoke loudly about decades before others were doing this. Now, one of my favorite articles, in fact, it appeared in my top 10 articles ever in JABA in my inaugural editorial when I became the editor of JABA. And that is the 1990 article, Balancing the Right to Habilitation with the Right to Personal Liberties. The rights of people with developmental disabilities to eat too many donuts and take a nap. You might think of this as the donuts and nap article, but I think of it as the personal liberties and rights article. That all of us have these opportunities to, as Judy LeBlanc said, be treated like a person. And sometimes, as a person, we like to take a nap or eat an extra donut, and that any individual has the right to those indulgences. That needs to be taken into consideration in the design of every program that we create in behavior analysis. Jan, thank you for being this voice. Now, Jan has lots of accolades and accomplishments. She was appointed as a fellow of Division 25 in 1993, as a KU Woman of Distinction. She was awarded the Distinguished Contributions to Behavior Analysis Award by Cannes ABA. She was inducted in the KU Women's Hall of Fame in 2017, and that Hall of Fame helped to serve as a model for how we're evolving our Hall of Fame. Jan also spent time with us, talking to us and teaching us about people like Frances Horowitz and Barbara Etzel. So thank you, Jan. And as I mentioned, my favorite article, that Donuts and Nap, our Personal Liberties and Rights article, was the 2020 SAAB JABA Seminole Article recipient. Jan has been recognized for her teaching and her service repeatedly throughout her career. She was an amazing teacher. She received multiple excellence and outstanding educator awards. She also was recognized for her advising, her mentoring, and her service to the university, but also to every student who goes to a university to have their life transformed. There was a variety of service to the discipline, including serving in roles as editor, guest, and contributing editor, not only in journals in our discipline, but legal journals, as well as reviewing and associate editing. She gave her time to help foster our advances in science. She also created outreach and service opportunities. She was the director of the Edna Hall Center for Child Development after Dr. Judith LeBlanc. She was the creator and director of the Truancy Prevention and Diversion Program in Kansas that has just been transformative. The Family Enhancement Project. She was a founding board member and EVP of Community Living Opportunities, which serves individuals with intellectual developmental disabilities and autism. And if you look at her vita, you will see that she served as a committee chair or director throughout the KU community for everything from briefly running their equal opportunity office to running a program on basketball mentorship. So if there is a way to build the community, Jan Sheldon will sign up for it twice and serve those people around her, her larger family. Jan says her life goals and impact really focused on teaching and working with undergraduates, graduate law students. Near and dear to her heart was delinquency, truancy, in-home therapy, but so many other things. Her goal in life was to make a meaningful difference in others' lives. Jan, you accomplished your goal. Dr. Shala Eli-Rosales says of Jan, she's one of the finest women I've ever known. She is brilliant, kind, and a champion for human rights and dignity for all. Jamie Price, one of her PhD students, talks about Dr. Sheldon's unwavering dedication and passion for promoting the use of behavior analysis to improve the lives of individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Her research in this area has enhanced our understanding of the field and made an important impact on society. She is an exemplary role model for others. Renee Norman says, Jan was an amazing mentor to me while working at Community Living Opportunities in the 90s. So in addition to being double faculty at KU, she was a supervisor, the kind of supervisor that you call mentor. And not just about the work we do, but she was a wonderful example of how to balance life as a working mother of 2 daughters. Her colleague, depicted here, Flo DeGennaro Reed, who we heard from last year at the conference, says Jan is a fierce advocate that can combine behavioral science and law to improve systems and lives. She is a strong woman that has made meaningful impact in her communities, she was happy to do her work and improve lives without taking the spotlight. Making an impact and changing people's lives drove her career, not the awards or accolades. She is the real deal in terms of making the world a better place. Here is an illustration of some of her career milestones spanning a 41-year, 51-year span while she was at Kansas, and so many things that she did to contribute to that community and to our larger community in in the profession of behavior analysis. So let me say this. I feel privileged to have met Jen Sheldon. She is a fierce advocate. She is a mentor, a role model, a compassionate leader, and a beautiful human being. May we all be like Jan. Thank you. So let me say that. I feel privileged.
Oh, it's a Mac. I'm just kidding.
Again, I lose. Funny.
Thank you. Uh-oh.
It's weird, the window's not going over there. Hang on. Sorry.
Do you want me to tell her to leave Zoom?
Maybe. Bear with me for just a second. Sorry, everyone.
Well, I could start by thanking everybody for being here in this room, and also thanking everybody who is on Behavior Live concurrently, or what do we use? Synchronously, because those were our new words since the last 3 years, right? And asynchronously. Some people are going to watch this later. This is, it's amazing to me for you to be giving this gift of your time. It's the greatest gift that you can give. And having your attention during that time also is amazing. Maria Ruiz, who I'm going to be telling you about, was my mentor in my undergraduate training. She is who brought me into behavior analysis, and that's true for many people who have had really full and complete careers, and also not quite complete yet. I mean, I'm not that old, but I still got a few working years left. There's some others here in the room who had Maria as their mentor, and I know that there are other people who knew her as friends and colleagues in the state of Florida, and also online, of course, there'll be friends and colleagues and mentees as well. So I'm very excited to share with you about her life and work. Start with a little bit about the early years. Maria Ruiz was born in Havana, Cuba in 1950 and was a young child during the Cuban Revolution. As Fidel Castro established his communist regime in Cuba in the early 1960s, and fear of indoctrination spread across the island, over 14,000 children were sent to the United States by their parents as part of what came to be known as Operation Peter Pan. This was the largest mass exodus of unaccompanied minors ever recorded in the Western Hemisphere. At age 11, she was sent to Miami, and she lived in a foster network for 3 years while she was awaiting her parents, who finally were able to secretly leave Cuba and join her in the United States. After her parents, who were both physicians, obtained U.S. citizenship and passed their medical board exams, the family moved to Orlando in 1965. Maria soon began her undergraduate studies at the University of Florida, where she would remain throughout her graduate training as well. She completed an MED in special education
and a master's and PhD in psychology with an emphasis in behavior analysis. Throughout her training and career, Maria was unbound by the branches of study that shape the increasingly specialized careers of behavior analysts today. She was mentored by Hank Pennypacker, and she was trained in the strong EAB tradition at UF. She worked on a variety of research projects, including those involving self-injury, stimulus over-selectivity, fluency-based instruction, and contingency contracting in the treatment of individuals with drug abuse. Maria continued to sharpen her EAB skills and expanded further into behavioral pharmacology in a postdoctoral position with Joe Brady at Johns Hopkins University. Prior to completing her dissertation at UF, Maria accepted a position at Rollins College. Rollins is a small, private liberal arts college in Winter Park, Florida. It's Florida's oldest institution of higher education. Maria became the first female faculty member in the psychology department when she arrived in 1980, and this was almost 100 years after the founding of the college. Rollins would become the environment in which Maria would thrive, setting in place the variables that would lead to what would arguably become her greatest contributions to our field, and those were her conceptual analysis, and most notably her explication of the alliance between feminism and radical behaviorism, and the empirical work that followed. And also her teaching and mentorship of undergraduate students. Several of these students went on to earn PhDs, specializing in a wide array of applications of behavior analysis that are largely reflective of Maria's own values. Just before she retired from Rollins, Maria established the Master of Applied Behavior Analysis and Clinical Science program, a program set apart by its combination of behavior analytic theory, experimentation, and practice, with the inclusion of an interdisciplinary approach that prepares students for the populations they aim to serve. After her passing in 2017, the Maria Ruiz Research Award was established. This award is presented at graduation to a student who best exemplifies Maria's focus on controlled, rigorous data collection to inform treatment decisions. Maria was the first, and perhaps remains the only person, who has presented explicitly a feminist, radical behaviorist perspective. This perspective is inherently and necessarily intersectional, as it clarifies and emphasizes the experiences and circumstances of an individual as these are impacted by socially constructed categories such as gender, race, and class. This is the scholarly work for which Maria has been most recognized. She revealed the natural alliances between radical behaviorism and feminism and showed how bridging these disciplines may clear a pathway for effectively enacting social change. Maria began to explore feminist literature in the 1980s as she sought to develop a course in the psychology of women. Her first major paper on the topic was a groundbreaking piece published in the Psychology of Women Quarterly in 1995. In that article, which was written primarily for an audience of feminist psychologists, Maria argued that radical behaviorism's appeal to contextual understanding of human behavior was well aligned with a feminist epistemology, grounded in the experiences of women and other marginalized groups. Behavior analysis, she argued, offered an understanding of human behavior that moved away from the personalization and pathologization, I could say that word earlier today, of behavior patterns that feminists had also argued had clear determinants in oppressive socio-political contingencies, institutions, and systems. A few years later, in an article published in the Behavior Analyst, Maria noted inconsistencies around the concept of personal agency in feminist theory, and she offered a more Skinnerian perspective on agency as action in context, as a solution. She acknowledged that although the two disciplines would continue to grow individually, an alliance would strengthen both. 30 years later, it's now, these considerations are more prevalent in our verbal communities. And I think she'd be thrilled to engage in this dialogue. I dearly wish she were here to guide us in these conversations. Maria's contributions here are as relevant now as they ever have been. And as we catch up to her work in this area, it's time we revisit what she taught us. I enthusiastically invite you to read her work. I want you to find me later if you're interested. I have a QR code that I can share with you that will take you to a list of related readings, so you can find them easily. I think it's very important that we challenge ourselves to engage with and carry forward her work. This is an important time to do this. I've also shared a link on Facebook with the hashtag feminism and radical behaviorism. So whether you're online or you are here in the room and you don't find me later and get the QR code, you can look up hashtag feminism and radical behaviorism on Facebook, and that will take you to the list. Maria and her conceptual work were appreciated by other great thinkers in our field, and this is from Ed Morris. Maria will always be alive to me, even while I miss her. In 1995, I was and remain dazed by the brilliance and bravery of her article, B.F. Skinner's Radical Behaviorism, Historical Misconstructions and Ground for Feminist Reconstructions. She taught us to find complementarities with others to our mutual benefit. I immediately assigned it in my courses. In 2003, I was and remain stunned by the insight and intuition of her article, Inconspicuous Sources of Behavioral Control, the Case of Gendered Practices. She taught us how unconscious we are of our unconscious and how to be conscious of it. I delight in rereading them, and I still assign these articles in 2023, and I delight in rereading them. And I make them real to students by extolling Maria's personal virtues, especially her authenticity, generosity, warmth, and passion. Maria will always be alive to me, even while her virtues make me miss her more. In an experimental extension of her theoretical work, Maria collaborated with Brian Roche of the National University of Ireland and his colleagues to develop the Function Acquisition Speed Test, the FAST. This is a behavior analytic reconstruction of the implicit association test that you may have heard of. Maria viewed the FAST as a way to experimentally evaluate the development of prejudiced verbal behavior and demonstrate that discriminatory behavior could be learned and potentially remediated using behavior analytic principles. And Brian has shared stories of Maria sketching out the first prototype of the procedures, which were to become the FAST, on the backs of cocktail napkins at ABBA. That's a meeting that it's one of the lounge moments I would have liked to have been in the room for. Indeed, Maria was the first person in the field to identify that behavior analysts could build superior tests to the IAT, and that these could be used in her feminist and social justice work. Although Maria's conceptual contributions were considerable, she has said that one of her greatest sources of pride was her legacy as a teacher and mentor. And this was another way in which she made an outsized impact. As a teacher, Maria arranged learning opportunities in diverse areas of behavior analysis, including exposing undergraduate to the Personalized System of Instruction, PSI, the EAB Animal Laboratory, and applied behavior analysis with children and adults with developmental disabilities. She arranged a winter intersession term in Mexico at Los Horcones, spending several weeks with a group of undergraduate students as they lived as part of the Walden II community. She always made her students feel as though they had something valuable to share, and in doing so, arranged the conditions under which the students found their own voices and cultivated their unique contributions. Maria viewed her role as teacher as that of a facilitator. She's said, "In very general terms, I view the process of teaching and learning as guided discovery. With experience in the field, the instructor assumes the role of a guide and facilitates for students the exploration of exciting new terrain. An overriding goal in this process is to equip the students with exploratory skills that they can apply in future journeys and ultimately allow them to become their own guides in the process." In the fall of 1981, as Maria was completing her dissertation, B.F. Skinner visited the UF campus and said, "Why are we not acting to save the world?" Maria's career was largely an answer to this call to action. Influenced by the personal challenges she had faced and the conceptual alliances she established with feminist scholars, Maria became a dedicated advocate for people who are members of traditionally marginalized groups, including women, immigrants, individuals with disabilities, and the LGBTQ+ communities. As a licensed psychologist and founder of a behavior analytics center for children with autism, she championed the right to effective treatment for those who receive behavior analytics services, including individuals with developmental disabilities, substance use disorders, and mental health conditions. She had grown to view behavior analytics science as a form of political activism, with the ability to enact effective change and the potential to expand our sense of community and human solidarity. Maria was the living embodiment of her work, a complex synthesis of behavior analysis, feminism, and social justice advocacy. Maria's former student, Michelle Soreth, who's here today with us, has shared, since Maria's passing in 2017, the field of behavior analysis has faced major challenges that reflect those in the larger cultural context, specifically involving the oppression and trauma experienced by members of marginalized groups and potential complicity of behavior analysts in that oppression. I was drawn to behavior analysis as a college student of Maria's in the late 1990s because of the inclusivity, self-awareness, and values of social justice embedded in the philosophy of behavior analysis as she presented it to us. Only after behavior analysts were openly challenged on these issues almost 20 years later did I begin to fully appreciate that this affinity was specifically for Maria's interpretation of behavior analysis based on her positionality and lived experience. Her unique understanding of behavior analysis centered on cultural humility and self-reflection, on the ways we participate in oppressive systems, continues to hold immense promise in directly addressing these systemic issues and moving our field forward. And from another former student, Kimberly Behrens, Maria created powerful distinctions for me regarding invisible contingencies governing cultural practices that I was previously blind to. That moment when you suddenly become aware of your blind spots, it's like the universe tilts on its axis. It fundamentally changed me in so many ways. When you become one of the lucky few to be empowered by behavior science and radical behaviorism, there is no going back. It is impossible to unsee what those distinctions have enabled you to see about the world. It becomes an enormous responsibility to carry those distinctions forward and effectively share them with others through service or mentorship. Maria gave me the gift of my life's purpose. So I would like for all of you here and all of you on Behavior Live in spirit to join me in celebrating Maria and just welcoming her into the Women in Behavior Analysis Hall of Fame. This is clearly a place where she should be. Thank you. And so, do we need to wrap it up, or, okay? Because I can keep going.
No, well, you can keep going. I think Chada said it great. Thank you for joining us. This evening, we have downstairs in Midtown 3, we have a celebration with a cash bar, and we have some food, a pasta bar, some desserts to just kind of hang out and honor these women. And there's also karaoke, so you can bring your karaoke voice too and sing praises to them with a microphone. So please join us. There's one more session today, and don't forget the posters downstairs as well. Thanks, everybody.